beyond which you were not supposed to bring your armies because of the danger of civil strife and so on, was a small river, the Rubicon River, in northern Italy.
11th January 49 BC, he crossed the Rubicon and entered Italy with his army. He had broken Roman law. There was no turning back.
That was an act of treason. It's as simple as that.
A few days later, Pompey fled Rome and prepared for civil war. Caesar marched down through Italy, defeating all who tried to stop him. His soldiers had come through the wars in Gaul and were at the peak of fighting fitness. Pompey gathered his legions at Brindisi, put them on ships, and sailed for Macedonia. The east was where he had made his name. There he could count on help and support. Caesar had no fleet, and it was more than a year later before he could follow with an army and face Pompey at Pharsalus. The stakes could not have been higher. The winner would control the whole Roman Empire. We now return to decisive battles, the Battle of Pharsalus. It is 49 BC, and Rome's two greatest generals, Caesar and Pompey, are fighting a civil war for control of the empire. Caesar had 22,000 legionaries against Pompey's 45,000. He was outnumbered 2 to 1, but his troops were battle-hardened. They were veterans who had fought in Gaul. Pompey had placed his troops on high ground overlooking the sea so that he could bring in supplies. Caesar was constantly having to find ways of feeding his army. Most of the surrounding countryside was loyal to Pompey.
Warfare at this period was dominated by two main imperatives. First of all, don't lose in battle. And secondly, don't let your army be starved into surrender.
Pompey set up his camp by those trees on that distant hill, where he could see Caesar's tents here, about 3 miles away.
Pompey wanted to win, but he did not want to fight. He felt that Caesar's troops were tired, they were hungry, they were malnourished, that eventually he could win without a fixed battle.
As one army broke camp, the other would follow and shadow it. But it was now summer and Caesar could find food more easily. Pompey's advisors urged him to finish Caesar off before he grew stronger.
Pompey's men, if they're being held back, will start to think, what's wrong with us? Why aren't we the equal of these people whom we outnumber? What's wrong with our general if he won't trust us to fight? So in the end, Pompey is convinced by these arguments.
On 9th August in 48 BC, Pompey's troops moved down from the high ground and drew up in battle order on the flat plain at Pharsalus. His cavalry and the left wing of Pompey's army, which had followed his charge, was milling around in confusion. Caesar sent in his fourth line against the horses. He ordered them to hold their pila upright and jab at horses and riders, like the spears in a phalanx.
Caesar told them to leap up, not to throw their spears, but to take their spears and push them up at the faces of these horsemen.
Ancient cavalry, indeed cavalry at most eras, don't do well against prepared heavy infantry. Pompeian cavalry were not expecting to run head-on into a well-disciplined line of Roman legionaries.
3,000 men, all with 8-foot spears, were just too much for the riders. Hundreds fell, and the remainder fled into the hills.
Caesar tells his men in the fighting line that even though they're outnumbered by the enemy legionaries, they can prevail because they're Caesar's men. And they do.
Caesar was an extraordinary leader of men. He had spent year after year after year with his troops in Gaul. He knew the names of his centurions.